I'm James Fadiman. On this program, we will be exploring the world of drugs, the complex issues raised by drugs in our society.
I had taken LSD and went to Epcot Center and had a very bad experience. And it's basically made me paranoid for the next 20 years.
I was completely disoriented and essentially I was out on the street for the best part of a week.
My father even told my grandparents that he didn't expect me to make it past Christmas because I was in such a state.
The discovery of psychedelics only really began in the kind of 1940s, 1950s. So it has a relatively short kind of cultural history and was very quickly sanctioned, largely because of what was going on in the States at that time, in the 1960s.
In the 60s, you started getting this countercultural movement that was related to questioning our involvement, the U.S. involvement in Vietnam, but they also were doing drugs. And I think there was a political scapegoating of psychedelics, saying, look, they're taking these new drugs and it's making them be countercultural or anti-government.
That and a kind of combination of media hysteria and some kind of reckless use of psychedelics, the government kind of made them prohibited. Unfortunately, that prohibition then kind of spread to the rest of the world and also inhibited the genuine use of these substances for exploration, research and therapy, which they were being used for at that time.
Part of the bad name for LSD is that people were having really bad trips, falling into places that were just hellish, hell realms, which could have been a reactivated birth experience, for example, or some other experience. But there was no way to support the process. It's like that you're lost in it, and then it just becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy over and over and over again. You get stuck there.
So setting is vitally important to the kind of outcome or experience you'll have in an altered state of consciousness. Crucially then, if you take LSD or psilocybin or something like that for the first time in a nightclub, it might not be the right environment for that kind of activity and may induce, a bad trip. And also the psychological state you have at the time. But that goes for any altered state of consciousness, I think. It's about context.
I'm a firm believer that rightly used psychedelic substances, they have a huge amount to offer both the therapeutic and the medical community.
Now, the irony is, within the eyes of the law, a substance of misuse is defined as something that has no therapeutic value. Whereas psychedelic substances potentially do have therapeutic value.
I've got someone that I used to be extremely good friends with that his father died and couldn't talk about it at all, and then would have take ecstasy together and go for a walk, and you'd actually open up and have that conversation about that thing. That's a beautiful thing. I hate the fact that it's so demonised within society.
The human brain, after all, is made for thinking, not fumigating. It's hardly a tinker toy for experimenting with drugs.
There is research ongoing now looking into the use of certain psychedelics for treatment in alleviating anxiety around death. People have cancer, in treating PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So for people, who've been raped or had kind of traumas in war, all of this kind of thing. So they have massive potential, particularly in treating certain treatment-resistant disorders which have a kind of psychological basis, such as depression, anxiety, trauma, this kind of thing. There may be an excellent opportunity for treating these substances. So they deserve to be explored on that aspect alone. And aside from that, we also have the other dimension in terms of what they can tell us about neuroscience as well and how the brain functions.
We will look back at our understanding of the human consciousness. 50 years from now, it'll be like looking through the wrong end of a telescope. We'll see how little we knew, and that actually we'll be standing in a view of human consciousnness that is not just limited to human, that is consciousness.
Goblins came out, 2 of them, little blue goblins with hoovers, were sucking up all the bad stuff out of my brain and literally cured me of the paranoia that I've had for 20 years.
It's like putting yourself in a year's worth of psychotherapy in one night.
It was completely healing. I was there, and yeah, I threw up. I was throwing up jealousy, I was throwing up rage, I was throwing up like latching onto the past, and I was purging my body of all of these ills that I'd done to it.
Ours is not the first culture to grapple with the attractiveness of drugs, but rarely has a culture focused this kind of attention on the issue.